Hi, I'm Rasheem. I'm an independent scholar and social scientist. My scholarship encourages a critical examination of society and culture through the lens of race, class, gender, sexual orientation, pretty much anything to do connected with identity. As an instructor, I'm very much committed to helping students gain a deeper insight into interdisciplinary, cross-cultural, and intersectional approaches to the academic study of marginalized populations. Today, I would like to talk to you about the socio-historical evolution of Karen. So, in order to paint a more full picture of Karen, I like to start with the sociological description of Karen, tell you a little bit about her thinking and her motivations. Then I want to move us into historical Karen, then real life references of Karen, then some pop culture references of Karen, and then finally, what's next for Karen? In terms of the sociological context of Karen, how do you identify a Karen? So Karen is a nomenclature that is used to describe typically white women who demonstrates one or more of the following characteristics. Karen is usually has a sense of entitlement. Karen knows that she's privileged and exercises that privilege. She is the self-appointed authority. She is the keeper of order and a system maintainer. In Karen's role as system maintainer, you can kind of typically count on Karen to not only tell you your place, but if you rebut her telling you your place, she elicits the support of authority, of whoever in that particular context that she deems as authority to help you put you in your place. And sometimes that means physically. So some of Karen's actions. Karen frequently asks to speak with your manager. She regularly weaponizes her whiteness and femininity. She might get an attitude if she asks you to touch your hair and you respond no, because that kind of like really speaks to like her sense of entitlement that she should get to do anything that she would like to do and doesn't see anything wrong with the request. In mid 2020, some of the ways in which we have seen Karen, like you might see Karen disputing or protesting against having to wear a mask because it infringes on some of her rights. You also may see her protesting around stay in place order because she can't get her hair cut. So she might protest, fight for access to someone else's labor, regardless of the risk to that other person's labor. So all of these speaks to that sense of entitlement, this exercising of privilege, being the self-appointed authority, and also then eliciting the support of other authority to enforce this social order. But Karen, while it may seem like a newer phenomenon, it may seem like it just came out of nowhere. And today we see memes of Karen, and Karen shows up as this like hysterical white woman yelling at people to stop doing what they're doing. Karens have been around for quite some time. So one of the historical aspects of Karen is this concept or this connection to safeguarding the virtue of white women. Safeguarding the virtue of white women has always been a central plank of white supremacy in U.S. culture. And Karen taps into this and elicits this authority to support and safeguard her and protect her and maintain this system and this order. And historically, that has led, in some cases, to death. Case in point. In 1955, you have the case of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old boy, and he was killed after being accused of offending a white woman in her family's or in her and her husband's grocery store. Now, this woman, Carolyn Bryant, later admitted in 2008, so that's like, 60, 70 years later, to fabricating her interaction with Emmett Till. She had earlier claimed that he had grabbed her physically and made lewd remarks. In recanting her story later, she admitted that she had largely falsified that interaction between herself and Emmett Till. Now, Emmett Till, what she did say was that he whistled at her. Now, that interaction that happened between them unwittingly, if at all, violated some structures of conduct that was kind of the social construct of what it meant for African American men and African American women in terms of their interaction in the Jim Crow era South, right? So as mentioned before, Karen is a system maintainer. She calls on an authority figure, in this particular case, her husband, and plays into his desire to safeguard her virtue. And to put this 14-year-old boy in his place. And at that particular time, his place ended up resulting in him being brutally beaten, mutilated, and killed and thrown into a river by her husband and some of her husband's friends. Now, most of us who know Black history, we know the story of Emmett Till, right? It was leveraged to spark and put fire behind some aspects of the civil rights movement. So we know largely some aspects of the story around Emmett Till. What we don't always know is about the woman who initiated his death. Her name was Carolyn Bryant. In her younger years, she was a beauty contest or beauty pageant winner. She dropped out of school very young. She was married very young. She later married an ex-soldier who was also a store owner. She had brighter aspirations for herself as a beauty pageant winner than to be working at a store. She hated working at this store. When she went home and she told her husband of this experience, her husband, in protecting her virtue, didn't just say, "I don't want you to work at that store anymore." His call to action was to go out to get this 14-year-old boy from his home, mutilate, maim, and throw him in the bottom of a river with a fan boat tied around his neck, right? So, and I want to share that in context because I think sometimes when we think of Karen, we think of this very funny expression. We think of this meme. We think of Karen as a caricature, but Karen is part of a longer line of concepts of how that shows up in our everyday life. So we have that historical context for the power of a Karen. But there are also contemporary real life examples of Karen doing some of the exact same things in today's culture, day and time. Right? So, for example, you have on Memorial Day of 2020, in May, a Black bird watcher by the name of Christian Cooper, who was walking in Central Park, New York. He ran into a woman, her name Amy Cooper. They are of no relation. And she had her dog off of the leash in a leash-only area of the park. He asked her to put her dog back on the leash. And her response was to call 911. And not only did she call 911, she did it in a very historical manner. She's on the phone, and there's video of it. She's on the phone. She tells operator, "There's an African-American man threatening my life."
Will you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in a ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
So you see at this point, Karen, who is supposed to be the person who is entitled, you don't tell Karen the rules. Karen tells you the rules. She has a particular concept of of the not only the order of things, but she is aware of her privilege, and you hear her weaponize it in the context of this telephone call. She says, "There's an African American man threatening my life." Very similar to the way that Carolyn Bryant and other women in his white women, particularly Karens in history, have leveraged that. Because again, that taps into that concept of protecting white women's virtue. And if you hear this video, she is screaming frantically and yelling into the phone. And the entire exchange was filmed and it was uploaded on social media. And she became known as Central Park Karen. Since then, there has been some responses. I believe she's had her dog taken away. She has apologized for the incident. And even Christian Cooper has, I guess you can say, forgiven her for the incident. But there's all of these things playing out in terms of the sense of entitlement, the leveraging, that aspect of her identity, being very much aware of it and it being weaponized. And in that particular incident, it didn't lead to Christian Cooper's death. Another case in point in contemporary time, according to KRON, James, a proud Filipino, was writing Black Lives Matter in yellow chalk right on a wall, a portion of wall in front of his own home. When a woman, Alexander, began accusing him of defacing someone else's property. They got into a back and forth exchange. He ended up being able to film it, but she threatened to call the police. And James shared, he would be more than happy to speak with the police.
I'm asking you if this is your property.
Why are you asking?
Because it's private property.
Because it's private property, sir.
So, are you defacing private property, or is this your building? You're free to express your opinions, but not on people's property.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Just respectfully.
Sure.
So we're just saying, absolutely, your signs and everything, and that's good. This is not the way to do it.
Okay.
It's private property.
But if I did live here and it was my property, this would be absolutely fine.
Totally.
And you don't know if I live here or if this is my property.
We actually do know. That's why we're asking.
Oh, really? Because you live here, right? You said so.
Because we know the person who does live here.
Oh, okay.
So
Then
that's all
I
we
suggest
wanted
you
to
call
ask.
him
I'm not
or
disagreeing with
call the
you.
police.
Why
Or
do you wanna call the police?
because
Would you
you're
want me
accusing me
to?
of a crime, correct?
What I'm asking you is why are you
And I'm
doing
not
this?
answering you.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So your choices are to call the cops if you believe I'm calling a crime, and I will more than be happy to talk to him.
Okay, thank you.
What's your name again?
I'm Lisa.
Lisa, what's your last name?
What is your name?
What's your name? I asked
I'm
first,
not
Lisa.
committing a crime,
What's your name,
sir.
sir? What's your last name, sir?
What is your first name, sir?
I'm not answering. I'm not talking to you. You're talking to me. I'm asking you the questions.
Well, we're not doing anything illegal.
Neither am I.
Actually,
Yes,
you are.
actually.
Really?
Property.
Oh, okay. Well, then call the cops.
Thank you. We will do so.
Lisa and Robert.
Yeah.
I'll be right here.
Okay, thank you so
Bye.
So you still have this reoccurrence of a person having their sense of entitlement threatened, their sense of the way of the structure of what things should be threatened. And then that person seeks authority to restore order as they see it. So in the pop cultural references of Karen, Karen has had a bit of an evolution. Karen wasn't always Karen. Before she was Karen, she was Becky. Before she was Becky, earlier in, I would say, like my grandmother's generation, she would have been referred to as Miss Ann. So, for example, in some pop cultural references for an earlier time for Miss Ann, you would see, for example, in writings of Zora Neale Hurston, she wrote Miss Ann is reference to a white woman. You would also see these in things like Maya Angelou's writings. There's a line where she's right. I'd remind them, please look at those knees you got at Miss Ann scrubbing, right? So there's still this reference to this white woman in place of using their actual name, using this reference of this authoritative, if you will, authoritative and entitled white woman. Miss Ann is also regarded as a coded term for white females in a dictionary of African American slang. In Geneva Smitherman's Black Talk, they reference and as a term for white women. So much earlier context, Karen, before again was Karen, was Miss Ann. Then you hear references again in popular culture to Becky, right? So in the early 90s, you hear references on Sir Mix-a-Lot song, Baby Got Back, right? On that one, there's a woman and she's saying, oh my gosh, Becky, look at her butt. It is like so big.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. It is so big.
Becky's also referenced in Beyonce's song where she says, Becky with the good hair.
You better call Becky with the good hair.
And then even more in contemporary times, in April, a woman by the name of Jennifer, who was later dubbed Barbecue Becky, was captured calling the police on two Black men who were using a charcoal grill to cook. They were cooking at Lake Merritt's Park, and they were cooking in the designated grilling zone. And she called the authorities and said to them, these two Black men, they are here, they are cooking in the non-designated area. This needs to be dealt with immediately so that coals don't burn any more children and we don't have to pay more taxes, right? So you still, again, have this authoritative sense of entitled Becky.
Yeah, I'd like to report that someone is illegally using a charcoal grill in a non-designated area in Lake Merritt Park, kind of near Cleveland Cascade. I'd like it dealt with immediately so that coals don't burn more children and our city has to pay more taxes.
So again, Karen hasn't always been Karen. Before that, she was Becky. Before Becky, she was Miss Ann. I imagine that in the future we'll probably have some other term should that fixture, should that personality or characteristics continue. Some popular depictions of Karen in popular culture, in movies. So Karen was in The Color Purple, for example, as the wife of a politician who thought that she was giving Miss Sophia a compliment by asking her to be her maid. She said, "A remark, your children are so clean. Would you like to be my maid?" Miss Sophia told her no. And when Miss Sophia told her no, that she didn't want to be her maid, she was quite offended. She ended up having to work for the politician's wife anyway.
Your children are so clean. Would you like to work for me? Be my maid?
In 2020, Karen is depicted through memes of white women being historical, making unreasonable demands. There's funny memes that show different haircuts, like this is the Karen haircut. There's viral videos that are captured on cell phones of white women being hysterical and making outrageous demands. Also in most recent depiction of a film called Little Fires Everywhere, Reese Witherspoon's character is very much a Karen. She's much more of a contemporary, feel as though she's evolved Karen. This is a Karen that you might even see wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt or something along those lines. But if you get a chance to watch that film, she definitely exemplifies what a more modern day Karen might look like.
You had good choices. Options that being rich and white and entitled gave you.
Again, that's the difference between you and me. I would never make this about race.
Helena, you made this about race when you stood out there in the street and begged me to be your maid.
And what's next for Karen? So there's a couple things that is out there surrounding Karen. In early July of 2020, Mr. Walton introduced Karen, which is called Caution Against Racially Exploitive Non-Emergencies Act. I guess they couldn't find a letter K that would make sense, but they wanted to make an acronym of Karen, and so it starts with a C, so it's CAREN. This bill would change the city's code to punish people who call 911 and file false racially based complaints. In other news about what's next for Karen, some are claiming that the term Karen is a racialized sexist slur. And I think that this self-victimization is hilarious and right on brand for Karens. So in terms of being able to really explore, what exactly is Karen, who exactly is Karen, it's really important to get the full picture. and think about the sociological aspects of a Karen rather than just the memification of Karens, right? Karen has a sense of entitlement. She exercises privilege. She is a self-appointed authority. She is a maintainer of systems. She elicits authority of others to keep balance and order and to help maintain that particular system. And she very much taps into this concept of safeguarding white women's fragility, and she weaponizes her whiteness and femininity. So while it can at times be a very hysterical video and even a funny meme, realize Karen's actions have real life social and sometimes detrimental consequences for people who come into direct contact or into her path.